Chapter 16. The Team. You've been kidnapped by beautiful strangers who know about the nightmare you survived. They drive you to an isolated mansion in the middle of nowhere at 1 a.m. Then they show you proof that everyone who died in that cursed village is now dead in the real world too. Their deaths reported as accidents, suicides, random tragedies. And when you ask what's happening, they tell you the truth. You're dying. You have 1 week left. Unless you can survive 11 more doors. Welcome to your new reality. Hope you're ready to die. The drive. The car pulled away from the residential complex and merged onto the main road, heading toward the outskirts of the city. Lin Qiushi sat in the back seat beside Qing Qianli, the silence between them thick and uncomfortable. Neither seemed inclined toward small talk, and the atmosphere inside the vehicle felt heavy, weighted with unspoken information and carefully guarded secrets. The city lights gradually thinned as they drove, tall buildings giving way to lower structures, dense urban development transitioning into scattered suburbs. The streets grew darker, less populated, more isolated with each passing mile. It wasn't until they merged onto the highway, the road stretching ahead into darkness broken only by occasional streetlights, that Lin finally broke the silence. "Where exactly are you taking me?" "I was wondering when you'd ask," Qing Qianli replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. "If I ask, will you actually tell me?" Lin kept his tone neutral, conversational, though tension hummed beneath the words. "No," Qing Qianli said simply. "I won't." Lin stared at him. "You people are really something else." The teenager just shrugged, completely unapologetic. The villa. Half an hour later, the car slowed and turned off the highway onto a narrow side road. They drove for another 10 minutes through increasingly rural landscape before finally stopping in front of an isolated structure that loomed against the night sky. Lin climbed out of the vehicle and took stock of his surroundings with growing unease. The building was a standalone villa, large, modern, and completely alone in what could only be described as the middle of nowhere. No neighboring houses, no streetlights, no signs of civilization except this single structure standing in defiant isolation. The nearest building they'd passed had been at least 3 miles back. Dense vegetation surrounded the property, overgrown bushes, wild trees, thick undergrowth that created natural walls of shadow. The air was alive with the sound of insects, a cacophony of chirping and buzzing that filled the darkness with aggressive noise. It was the kind of sound that seemed louder than it should be, almost aggressive in its persistence, as if the natural world was trying to drown out human presence. Ruan Nanju parked the car with practiced ease and led them down a narrow path toward the villa's entrance. Lin pulled out his phone to check the time. 1 a.m. exactly. He also noticed his signal had dropped to almost nothing, a single weak bar flickering uncertainly. Too remote for proper coverage. Too isolated for help if he needed it. A perfect location for things to happen that shouldn't be witnessed. Ruan Nanju reached the front door and pushed it open without bothering to knock or unlock it, walking in as if he owned the place. Which Lin supposed he probably did. The briefing. The interior was a stark contrast to the dark, insect-filled wilderness outside. Lights blazed throughout the first floor, creating an almost clinical brightness that made Lin blink after the journey through darkness. The villa's living room was spacious and well-furnished, designed with modern minimalist aesthetics that suggested both wealth and particular tastes. 3 people occupied the space, seated on various pieces of furniture in casual postures that suggested they'd been here for hours. 2 men and 1 woman, all appearing to be in their 20s or early 30s. When Lin entered, all 3 turned to look at him with expressions of curiosity mixed with something harder to identify. Assessment, perhaps, or the kind of detached interest one might show toward a laboratory specimen. "Ruanji." One of the men stood, addressing Ruan Nanju with clear respect that bordered on deference. "You're back." Ruan Nanju acknowledged this with a slight nod. He selected a sofa and settled into it with casual grace, then gestured for Lin to sit beside him. Lin hesitated, acutely aware that sitting would be accepting something, committing to participation in whatever this was. But standing in defiance seemed pointless and possibly dangerous. After a moment's consideration, he complied, perching on the edge of the sofa with posture that suggested he might bolt at any moment. "You just came out of a door." Ruan Nanju's statement wasn't a question. He extended one elegant hand, palm up. "The paper. Where is it?" Lin was taken aback by the directness. No preamble, no explanation, no attempt at persuasion or social niceties. Just a demand for something Lin hadn't even mentioned possessing. Don't you think you should explain the situation first? Lin's voice carried an edge of frustration. You break into my home, drag me to some isolated location in the middle of the night, and now you just demand I hand things over without any context? Qianli, Ruan Nanju said calmly, explain. Qianli sighed with the put-upon manner of someone who'd done this many times before. He stood, grabbed a laptop from the coffee table, and typed rapidly for several seconds before passing the device to Lin. Lin accepted it with confusion. What is this? Look, Qianli said simply. The death reports. The laptop screen displayed 8 or 9 browser tabs, all open to different news websites. Lin moved the mouse cursor, clicking through the pages with growing horror as patterns emerged. Every tab showed news from the previous day. Every article reported a death, and not ordinary deaths. These were accidents, tragedies, incidents that seemed unrelated on the surface but shared a common thread once you knew what to look for. One article caught Lin's attention immediately because he recognized it. A car crash in X City. The driver had been speeding, lost control, and collided with a guardrail. Death was instantaneous. The news report included a surname initial and a photograph that, while grainy, was unmistakable. Zhang Zishuang. The man he'd seen pulled from a crashed vehicle earlier that evening. The man who'd worn those specific clothes inside the door, who died when the tree fell during the timber-cutting ritual. Lin clicked through the other articles with hands that had started trembling slightly. A woman who jumped from her apartment building. Suicide, the report concluded. Another man found dead in his home from apparent carbon monoxide poisoning. A drowning in a public pool. A fatal allergic reaction. A home invasion gone wrong. Different deaths, different methods, different cities. But as Lin studied the details, the brief descriptions of the deceased, the occasional photographs, the fragments of information that survived journalism's need for brevity, recognition bloomed like poison flowers. He knew these people. All of them. Every single person in these death reports had been in that mountain village with him. They were the 13 who'd entered the door together, the group that had been whittled down to 6, then 5, then fewer still. And now, according to these reports, they were all dead. Every single one except him. Even those who'd survived the village, who'd made it through that nightmare and presumably escaped back to reality, had died anyway. Within a single night, spread across the country, claimed by circumstances that looked mundane on the surface but were anything but. When you die inside a door, Lin said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, you die out here too? Qianli nodded gravely. I'm telling you this first so you understand the stakes. The doors aren't a game or a bad dream you can wake up from. If something happens to you inside, you die in reality. The how and when might vary, car crash, suicide, accident, whatever, but the result is the same. Dead is dead. Lin felt the laptop growing heavy in his hands, as if the weight of all those deaths had somehow transferred into the physical device. What are they? The doors, I mean. What the hell are they? Hard to explain scientifically because they exist outside conventional scientific frameworks, Qianli said, glancing at Ruan Nanju before continuing. They simply are, and they violate every natural law we know. But here's what matters right now. You just came out of a door and you received a paper. That paper is extremely important. We need it. I didn't bring it with me, Lin said. It's back at my apartment. That's fine. Do you remember what it said? Qianli leaned forward with sudden intensity. Lin nodded slowly. Under the weight of multiple stares, everyone in the room now focused on him with laser attention. He spoke, Fitcher's bird. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Ruan Nanju issued a single command, search. The room exploded into coordinated action. Everyone moved simultaneously, pulling out devices, opening new browser windows, typing rapidly. The casual atmosphere vanished, replaced by focused urgency that made Lin's anxiety spike even higher. Wait, what's happening? Lin looked around at the flurry of activity. I don't understand. Have you experienced anything strange recently? Ruan Nanju interrupted, his eyes still on his phone as his fingers moved across the screen. Any unusual occurrences or omens? Omens? Lin repeated. Yes, omens. Ruan Nanju's voice remained calm, almost clinical as he explained. Seeing things you haven't seen before. Small accidents that don't make sense. Or perhaps He paused, looking up to meet Lin's eyes directly. Animals that won't let you touch them anymore? Lin's breath caught. Yes. My cat won't let me near him now. Can that be fixed? Is there treatment? No treatment, Qing Qianli said flatly. Just cut your losses. Lin glared at him. Ruan Nanju silenced Qing Qianli with a look before returning his attention to Lin. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but carried the weight of absolute certainty. You're dying. The words hit like a physical blow. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. Ruan Nanju's expression remained neutral, almost compassionate. But if you can survive 12 doors, you'll live. You'll be free of the door's influence completely. The door's influence? Lin felt like he was drowning in questions, each answer spawning 10 new uncertainties. He wanted to ask everything at once but forced himself to slow down, to prioritize. Looking at Ruan Nanju's face, beautiful but impatient, the expression of someone who had limited tolerance for excessive questions, Lin knew he needed to be strategic. As if reading his mind, Ruan Nanju said, You don't need to rush with questions. You have a week before your next door. Plenty of time to understand what's happening. Qianli, he's your responsibility. I swear this is my least favorite part of the job, Qing Qianli groaned. New recruit orientation. Sorry to inconvenience you, Lin muttered. Alright, one more question for tonight, Lin said, making a decision. This question felt more important than all the others, more personal and pressing. Just one. What? Qing Qianli asked. Who is Ruan Baijie to all of you? Lin looked around the room, studying faces. She's connected to you somehow, right? She has to be. The atmosphere shifted instantly into something strange and awkward. Silence fell, heavy and loaded with meaning Lin couldn't parse. Qing Qianli's expression twisted into something complicated. He appeared to be desperately trying to suppress laughter, his face contorting with the effort. You'll find out eventually, Ruan Nanju said, his voice warm with what might have been amusement. Don't rush. Why are all your expressions so weird? Lin looked between them, confused by reactions that seemed disproportionate to his simple question. The assignment. While they'd been talking, the others in the room had compiled information about Fischer's bird and related materials. Someone handed Ruan Nanju a tablet, and he scrolled through the data with focused attention, his expression growing more serious with each passing second. After several minutes of reading and occasional quiet consultations with the others, Ruan Nanju stood abruptly. Qianli, introduce him to everyone. I need to go out. Sure thing, Qing Qianli replied. Ruan Nanju left without further explanation, and moments later, the sound of a car engine starting filtered in from outside. Then that faded too, leaving them in relative quiet, broken only by the continued chorus of insects beyond the walls. Lin and Qing Qianli looked at each other in the aftermath of Ruan Nanju's departure. Finally, Qing Qianli stood and gestured around the room. All right, introductions. This is Lin Qiushi, the only woman on our team. She's got more guts than most of the men here and a personality that makes sailors seem refined. Fuck you, Qing Qianli, Lin Qiushi said cheerfully, proving his point. Can you manage even one sentence without being an asshole? Qing Qianli ignored her and moved on. Qin Fei, the one with glasses. And Man, the other guy. Man is extremely high maintenance and talks way too much. Best to keep your distance. Qin Fei nodded politely at Lin. Man shot back. Are you trying to get punched, Qing Qianli? This is Lin Qiushi, Qing Qianli concluded. You all already knew that. The person Ruan Ji personally brought back. The three team members seemed friendly enough in a distant, professional way, but none made any real effort to engage Lin in conversation or welcome him warmly. The reception was cordial but distinctly cool, like colleagues acknowledging a new hire they hadn't asked for. Qing Qianli noticed Lin's slight confusion at the lack of warmth. With surprising sincerity, he explained, Don't take it personally that they're not welcoming you with open arms. The thing is, we have no idea how long you'll survive. Getting emotionally invested in someone who might be dead in a week is painful. It's happened before. Lin stared at him. Wow, that makes me feel so much better. Really. I'm totally comforted now. At least survive your next door, Qing Qianli continued as if Lin hadn't spoken. Though Ruan Ji will probably accompany you through it, so you shouldn't be in too much danger. Probably. About Ruan Baijie, Lin started. Are you hungry? Cheng Qianli interrupted with obvious desperation. Want something to eat? I can make you a sandwich. Lin narrowed his eyes. That was the most obvious topic change I've ever witnessed. Cheng Qianli just grinned, completely shameless about his deflection. The villa at night. Lin wasn't hungry, and after being yanked from sleep and dragged across the city, he was far too wired to even think about sleeping. Instead, he sat on one of the sofas and watched the team work. They were deep into research mode, all focused on gathering every scrap of information about Fischer's bird they could find. Despite it being just a fairy tale, they approached the task with the intensity of intelligence analysts hunting for terrorist cells. Chen Fei and Yi Man were already making plans to visit the library first thing in the morning to dig through physical texts and academic papers that might not be digitized. The dedication was impressive and slightly unnerving. If you're bored, you can go upstairs and sleep, Cheng Qianli offered after a while. We've prepared a room for you, right side of the hallway, the one at the very end. There's even a computer if you want a game or whatever. I'll go rest then, Lin said, not because he expected to sleep but because he wanted some time alone to process everything. Night, Cheng Qianli said absently, already turning back to his research. Lin climbed the stairs to the second floor, his footsteps soft on expensive carpeting. The hallway was dimly lit by wall sconces that created more shadow than illumination. He turned right as instructed and began walking toward the far end of the corridor. That's when he saw the figure. The brother. Someone stood at the end of the hallway, perfectly still, positioned in the deepest pool of shadow where the light barely reached. Lin's first assumption was that this must be another member of the household, perhaps someone who'd been sleeping when they arrived. He was about to call out a greeting when the figure stepped forward slightly, and Lin got a clear look at the face. His blood ran cold. It was Cheng Qianli. The same face, the same build, the same general appearance. But something was fundamentally different about the expression, the bearing, the entire aura the person projected. And more importantly, Cheng Qianli should still be downstairs. Cheng Qianli? Lin took an involuntary step backward, his voice tight with tension. How are you up here? The figure's eyes were cold, emotionless, carrying none of Cheng Qianli's youthful energy or casual friendliness. When he heard Lin's question, his lips moved in what wasn't quite a smile. I'm not Cheng Qianli. The voice was similar but different. Slightly deeper, more controlled, lacking the teenager's natural warmth. Then who are you? Lin asked, continuing his slow retreat. I'm Cheng Qianli's brother, the figure said simply. What? Cheng Qiushi. He pronounced it clearly, watching Lin's face for recognition or reaction. Lin stood frozen in the hallway, his mind struggling to process this new information. After a long moment of silence, the kind that stretches uncomfortable and strange, he turned and ran back downstairs. Cheng Qianli was exactly where Lin had left him, seated in the living room engaged in animated conversation with Lin Qiushi about something on one of their screens. When Lin burst back into the room, they both looked up in surprise. What's wrong? Cheng Qianli asked. You have a twin brother? Lin's voice came out higher than intended. Oh, right. I forgot to mention that, Cheng Qianli said with the casual tone of someone who'd forgotten to mention they'd gotten a haircut, not that an identical human existed. Lin just stared at him. How do you forget to mention you have a twin brother? And what the hell kind of names are those, Qiushi Qianli? Together they sound like diarrhea for 1,000 miles? End of chapter 16. To be continued.